What's up, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of the AAPI Leadership Lab, brought to you by NAAAP Las Vegas. I'm here with a great guest of ours who's been so gracious enough to join us. His name is Bryan Fukuzawa. He's the Vice President of Mission Programs at Goodwill of Southern Nevada. Bryan, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Rico. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, thanks again for taking the time. And I'm just going to jump right in. So
Yeah.
tell us a little bit about yourself, where you're from, so the listeners can get an idea of your background.
Sure. So I am half Japanese. I'm half Caucasian. My mom is what you think of like a traditional kind of like blonde hair, blue eyed woman, and my dad is full Japanese. So growing up, I was actually born in California, but I spent almost the entirety of my childhood in Ohio, and then went through college there. Ended up coming to Las Vegas, chasing after my family, who moved from Ohio to Las Vegas. And as soon as I got here, they all kind of dispersed and left me here. But I call Las Vegas home, and I've been here since 2011.
Nice. And so I want to go back even a little bit farther. So you grew up you said you were born in California.
Mhm.
How old were you when you moved to Ohio?
I was in elementary school, so very,
Elementary.
very young. Yeah.
Okay. And so what was that experience like, going from, maybe you were too young to understand the move, what was happening, and then maybe even the cultural differences, but what was it like moving from California, which is probably one of the most diverse places in the United States,
Yeah.
to Ohio, which it's not the first place you think about when you think about like immigrants and people coming in?
Yeah, absolutely. And that was, I didn't recognize it at the time. Moving from California, that's all I knew. And then moving to Ohio, it was very, very different. It was certainly not as diverse by any means. But what I recognized when I did move to Ohio is that there really wasn't anybody that looked like me. So moving there, that was my first kind of culture shock, where I just kind of always looked around and people looked very diverse everywhere that I was. And then all of a sudden it just wasn't diverse anymore.
Yeah. So what was that school experience? I'm assuming you had a normal school experience, but what was that like, going to school, and what kinds of things did you gravitate towards? Was it education? Was it athletics? Was it extracurricular?
Yeah, kind of a little bit of all that. I think that instilled in me was always that very traditional, work hard, study, get your grades, but also sports kind of dictated all of my life. So everything that I wanted to do was related to sports. I played three sports in all throughout, elementary school and junior high and high school. I ran track and field in college, so I naturally gravitated toward the crowds that were into those kind of things as well. But it was very, very different. Growing up in California, I felt like it was just kind of, part of who I was. When I moved to Ohio, there were a lot of, I think, stereotypes that went along with that. And it felt like I grew a little bit of a chip on my shoulder, just trying to prove myself with every sport that I played.
Yeah. I mean, we didn't talk about this in the pre-show, but I'm just curious because we met at a comedy show, and they were talking about, usually it's not the father. So your
Yeah.
father is actually full Japanese,
Yes.
and so your last name is Fukuzawa,
Mhm.
and so that probably would have been, it was more interesting going to school, because it's not, if take your father's name and your father is
Yeah.
the Caucasian one, usually
Yeah.
it's a Smith, or something like that.
Yeah.
When you grew up with the last name Fukuzawa, did that introduce challenges? Was it weird? Did you know you were a little bit different when you were in school?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, nobody could ever pronounce my name correctly, so that was always part of it. The different variations of it, of course, there's some things in there that are probably not appropriate for a podcast like this, but I do think that automatically put eyes on me in a different light for sure. And even growing up, I was a lot smaller than most people. I was, I was kind of nerdy with my high socks, my short shorts, and tight shirts, and all that good stuff too, which didn't play into my efforts to try to demonstrate that I was a good athlete. But I think that just having that name alone, it did, it gave me cool nicknames, of course, but it identified me as being very different from everybody else right off the bat.
Leaving that a little bit, what was the dream? So little Bryan, whether it was elementary school, middle school, high school, what was the dream? What did you want to be when you grew up?
Well, honestly, all that I ever wanted to be was I just wanted to be involved in sports. So I think that growing up, I didn't really know what I wanted to do, but I knew that athletics was going to be part of my journey, and I knew that I always wanted to help people. So
Hmm.
growing up, even when I was playing sports, I was naturally kind of the coach on the team, the playing coach. So after graduating, after doing everything, that was my natural path where I just became a coach and helping with track and field, with volleyball, volunteering for Special Olympics to make sure that I could just try to get that fulfillment for myself, but also spread some things that I could do to make some impact in my life. And then that led me to my role as being a career coach with Goodwill. That's kind of how I started here.
Yeah, so let's get into that. I was going to say, now fast forward. You mentioned a little earlier the tipping point for moving to Vegas was
Mhm.
following family. So I'd love to hear a little bit about that. Like, you could have gone anywhere, but why
Mhm.
Vegas? And then what was what made you join a organization like Goodwill?
Yeah. So my family, they all left me when I was in college, and I stayed in Ohio for a little while and made sure that I just kind of was working, doing my own thing. But then after about 5 years after college, I thought, you know what, it's probably time to be closer to my family. They all relocated to Las Vegas, and that was right during that recession where everybody was buying houses super cheap. There were jobs everywhere for people right as we were emerging from that. So I moved out here and then quickly realized that we were no longer in that mode and everything wasn't exactly like it was promised to me by my family. So I came here and I took the first job that I could, and that was actually working as a server. And then 1 month later, I got the job at Goodwill that was designed to help individuals with disabilities, kind of coaching them, training them, evaluating them to help them get into employment in whatever that may look like in their lives. So I
Hmm.
worked both jobs for a year. I made a commitment to work for a year as a server, fulfilled that commitment, and then just kept my journey with Goodwill and have been with Goodwill ever since.
So how did you decide on the career coaching? Like, what about that role? Because you said yourself you wanted to be in athletics,
Hmm.
and maybe even uh, athletic coach,
Yep.
and then you were a server. How does that journey lead into career advising and coaching at a place like Goodwill? It's
Yeah,
such an interesting path.
yeah, definitely. I approach everything kind of with that mentality of being a coach. And working at Goodwill, I was kind of coaching, but then when I transitioned over to our career services side, which is where we assist people that just walk in looking for whatever we can help them with to get a job,
Hmm.
I looked at it kind of like I would as an athletics coach looks at their players. And everybody who comes to the door, everybody who needed assistance, I thought, well, what can I do to be the best coach possible? So I studied the game. I made sure that I looked at different resources and figured out different techniques that could apply to different people. And through that journey, I actually connected with a local organization that was coaching youth and young adults with track and field. So it kind of tied into that where I knew it was meant to be because as I was doing the career coaching part of it, naturally a track and field coaching position just kind of fell into my lap as well. And I did that for 5 or 6 years and just, had a great time with that.
Nice. Um, okay, and so you're at Goodwill. You're also coaching track and field. What's life like for you? What challenges were you facing at the time? I want to get into like some of the stuff we talked about in the
Mhm.
pre-show, but let's get to this part first. So, like, how were things for you for the first 5, 6 years you were there?
Yeah, so with Goodwill, when I first started, I had this fire to just help people and to just look at every problem that anybody brought to me and figure out a way to resolve it. And I kept that fire for a very, very long time until I probably got to the point where I think looking back at it now, I can see that I kind of plateaued. And ultimately, what I believe happened is I just kind of got complacent for about 4, 5, 6 years in my journey. I don't think that I was not doing what I should be doing, but I definitely was just kind of like, this is where I am. I don't need to look at management rules. I don't need to look at anything above that. I'm just going to stay where I am because it's comfortable. And after speaking with you during the pre-show, it didn't even occur to me that a large part of that is probably because of my upbringing and it's just the way that my dad naturally would act as well, where it's just that kind of traditional keep your head down, work hard, do everything that you're supposed to do, don't make any noise, don't advocate for yourself, don't talk about your problems or your feelings, your mental health, and just do the job. And I think that I kind of got myself stuck in that mode until I was eventually convinced by a few great leaders that it's time for me to explore something that I could unlock more of my potential and have a greater impact.
Yeah, that was a interesting conversation we had, and no,
Hmm.
it's also, I mean, I've seen it in people I've talked to before, where even if you start to whether it's your parents themselves growing up as an Asian American or yourself, when you're like, oh, I can do more, I can do more, but then this little voice says, but you have a good job,
Yeah.
like you have a good gig, you're gonna leave that, why would you leave that, right? And that happened to me in my career whenever I wanted to make a big change. like that little voice would come in my head, but you have a good job. Like, why do you want to ruin that? Right. And it's something that part of our upbringing of, like you said it, you don't rock the boat. You kind of keep your head down. It's all about getting good grades and working hard. Do that for like 40 years and then you retire.
Yeah, exactly. And it was so interesting to me when I first had a conversation with you thinking about that. I'd never even acknowledged that or recognized that in myself. I just kind of thought, yeah, I don't know why I was complacent for so long. I don't know why I was just so content to just be, I was still making a difference and I was still very passionate about what I did, but I knew that I could have made a greater impact, that I could have helped develop things a lot more that would help more people. But I never even thought about it until we had that conversation. I thought, well, that makes a lot of sense. Absolutely is a big part of the reason why I just kind of stayed where I was.
So fast forward, we talked about, there's some leaders that convinced you or saw the potential in you and they wanted to incentivize you or just encourage you to do more. So tell me what that was like.
Yeah. So, I was very reluctant, but I eventually took a manager job where I was managing our career centers. And, yeah, I knew that it wasn't my end goal. And I knew that stepping into a management role meant that there'd be a lot more responsibility, a lot more things that I could actually impact. And I was only in that role for a little bit less than a year. And during that time, I knew that I could make a bigger difference. But ultimately, I was only encouraged to do that by the people that were above me at Goodwill that really just encouraged me to say, you know what? You're doing things at a career coach level that you should be sharing with your teammates. You should be helping other people develop because at that point I'd been here for almost a decade and just a lot of experience that I was kind of keeping to myself and my best practices and things like that. So I had great leaders, I had great support, I had a lot of people around me that were encouraging me to pursue something greater. And within, I went from a manager role, skipped over a director role, and I just applied for the vice president admission program role, kind of not really thinking that I had a shot at it, thinking like, I don't have the experience, I don't have the qualifications. But I ended up getting the job, and looking back at it now, I wish that I would have gone after something like this a lot sooner. But of course, no regrets because it leads me to be where I am today and all the lessons that I learned. But I'm having more excitement, more fire, and I have more passion than I've ever had in my whole tenure at Goodwill.
That's amazing. Congratulations.
Oh, thank you, thank you.
uh, and even coach to coach, one of the things is, one of the simple self-coach hacks is what's the worst that can happen,
Yeah,
right? And so it's easy to coach other people in that way, but when it's yourself, when you're looking at yourself, it's harder, it's easier said than done, right? So I can say to you, Bryan, what's the worst that can happen if you apply to that VP role? The worst that happens, you say no and you just go on living your life.
yeah,
um
exactly. And it's such a good mindset. And I don't think that it's anything that I didn't know. I just think I don't know what it took for me to actually step out of that and say, you know what, I don't need to settle for where I am. It was a great job and everything, but I knew that I had a lot more that I can contribute. So I 100% agree. Just what is the worst that can happen?
yeah, and we talked about before, you had a lot of good things happen that year,
Yeah.
right? Or in that small time frame. What other good things happened because you kind of decided to say yes to things?
Yeah, it was, looking back at it, maybe it was that midlife crisis. I don't know. Around that time, I turned 40. I got a passport for the first time in my life. I traveled overseas to Europe. I got engaged and then eventually married my wife the same month that I received that promotion. And it's just like everything kind of unlocked within me just from taking that step out of my comfort zone and just saying, like you said, like, what's the worst that can happen? Why not try it? Why not see where this goes? And just everything in my life just kind of clicked and just fell into place the way that it should.
Yeah. So we talked a little bit about how your Asian American background um, could have introduced some challenges, but how else has it influenced your path, and how has it helped shape you as a leader?
Yeah, so one of the things that's very interesting, specifically about Japanese Americans, is that my paternal grandparents were actually in an internment camp back in the 1940s, and what I've heard passed down from my dad is that they were given a week to sell everything that they owned, so including houses, cars, everything, and they could pack one suitcase, report to a train station, and then for an indefinite amount of time, they were going to be stationed in an internment camp. So when they got out of that camp, about 10 years later is when my dad was born. So my dad was always raised to, again, not make any noise, not cause any problems, but also to kind of not talk about being Japanese. So he grew up very, very much disassociated with his identity, with being Asian American, even being Japanese at all. And that was kind of passed down to my generation as well. And it wasn't until just before the pandemic, I think in 2019, that we had family members that got together and had this humongous reunion that had almost 200 people there. A lot of family members I've never met before, people who had a lot of stories, a lot of things that we can compare notes to. So I think that my experience as an Asian American was very, very different than a lot of other Asian Americans. Although there are a lot of similarities, I think that that had a profound impact on me where it was almost like it was just the part of us that we didn't talk about for our whole childhood, basically.
That's crazy because that, like it or not, like that impacted your family a lot, right? And you we talked about before, your family kind of lucked out. Can you talk about like how they lost their property and how they actually were lucky enough to get it back?
Yeah, yeah. So very, very fortunate that so during World War II, there was a lot of speculation, a lot of issues with people, kind of their views on Japanese Americans. And what was very fortunate is that my grandparents and their parents actually lived in an area where it wasn't as like urban as my dad grew up, but ultimately they were able to sell everything to their neighbors. And when they got out of those internment camps, their neighbors sold it back to them for the same exact price. So a lot of Japanese Americans weren't fortunate to have that kind of relationship with their community, but we were very fortunate to not have to start completely over. We were able to, my family was able to start kind of back where they were with just a hiccup in their time there.
Yeah, oh man, that's I can't even imagine. Like that's a whole. We didn't get into it last time, but that's a whole nother thread we could pull if we wanted to. But
Oh
that's
yeah.
probably another show, another podcast. Because that was a dark time in like U.S. history. Just that whole like internment camps and things like that. And to fortunately enough, your family came out of it. I don't want to say unscathed because I mean being an internment camp in itself is like has its own psychological
Sure.
and like all the things like that. But the fact that your family was able to persevere and come out of it, and then you're here because of it, right? Like who would you be here if that series of events didn't happen?
Right. Yeah. And just, thinking about the way that I was raised and the way that I am now, you're exactly right. I could be a completely different person. My dad could have been a completely different person. But yeah, and that's the thing is that I think that my family was one of the very, very lucky few that actually got out and relatively unscathed compared to a lot of other people. But, there were years down the road, the government provided reparations for those that were in the internment camps, deep apologies, of course, and then making laws to prevent stuff like that from happening again. But yeah, very, very dark time for sure for my family.
Yeah. So thinking about that and knowing your history, how you grew up, knowing that those things were part of who you are and part of your heritage, how has that shaped you as a leader? I mean, you have a big job, and so for people who report to you, or even people who come to you to take advantage of the resources that Goodwill provides, how has your past, your history shaped you as a leader?
Yeah, I think that I still feel a lot of connection to my Japanese side, of course. Even anecdotally as a kid when I was learning how to write, I really studied penmanship because I just happened to hear that samurais had great penmanship. So I made sure that that was a big part of what I did. But I applied that to kind of everything. I thought, well, if that is the samurai spirit, I want to embrace that, and I want to make sure that I apply that to everything that I do, and just make sure that I am the best that I can be, and all that great stuff. So I think that as a leader, I still have that in me to try to figure out the way to operate the best way possible, to try to be the hardest worker, to try to do all the things that I think would make my dad proud and my ancestors proud and everything like that. But I think that I kind of mentioned it before. I think I grew a chip on my shoulder just from all the experiences that my family has been through, and thinking I just have one more thing that I need to prove. And I don't think I'll ever get past that, where I just feel like I have to keep proving myself, which, can be a blessing, can be a curse, but I look at it as just kind of a motivator that I see as a blessing. So I think that's probably the ultimate way that it shaped me as a leader.
Yeah, I that totally resonates. The got something to prove. I don't think I actually got that over that myself until more recently. Um, that I felt like there's no, what more do I have to prove,
Yeah.
right? So I want to get into a little bit about, because you do great work at Goodwill, and I'd love to for the audience to understand like what it is that you do, how you impact the community, and then maybe even how they can help.
Sure. Yeah, I think most people know Goodwill. They know the brand name, which is fantastic. And most people know it because of donations and thrift stores, which is also fantastic. But one of the things that a lot of people don't know about Goodwill is that we take the revenue that we generate from our retail stores and it goes right into our mission services program. So I am fortunate enough to be able to work on the mission services team where we take that money and we help prepare people for employment. So that can be things as simple as us helping them with resume development, connecting them with job leads, helping them with interview skill building, and all the things that they need to even look for a job. It can be as deep as us kind of looking at their whatever barrier is stopping them from getting the job that they want, helping them with training and certification and licensing, and connecting them with hundreds of employers that we work with. That's one of the big misconceptions of Goodwill is that I think people just don't know about what we actually do with the money that we generate. And the best thing that people can do when they donate, when they shop, when they support our programs, that is helping us help more Southern Nevadans. And we were actually able to help about 3,500 Southern Nevadans obtain employment last year because of the services that we offer at Goodwill.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah.
I mean, and also considering like the what's going on with the market, it's the
Yeah.
uncertainty and just like the job market in general. To place 3,500, that's 3,500 people who might have been out of work otherwise.
Yeah, and I always tell people that that's how many we can prove that we know. I
Right.
know that we've helped more people than that, and that's perfectly fine. Our whole goal is just let's figure out what that barrier is, let's figure out how to remove it, and then let's all celebrate together because ultimately if we can help make our community stronger, it's going to make all of us stronger, and that's what it's all about.
Right. Rising tide, right?
That's right.
So do people have to have certain qualifications to take these, or is this open to anyone? Like who qualifies to take advantage of these resources?
Yeah, great question. We typically serve anybody 18 and over that's just looking for our assistance. I think that one of the toughest things for people is just taking that first step. We kind of talked about it even with our experiences, but
Hmm.
taking that first step to say, you know what, I'm going to see what Goodwill's all about and see what I can do to maybe help myself or help my family just get into a better situation. Eligibility is pretty flexible with us. We just want to make sure that we're helping in whatever way that we can. If somebody potentially isn't eligible for one of our programs, we will still work with that individual to help them become eligible or to connect them with resources that we can. So I always say, kind of as a blanket statement, don't let any kind of fear of eligibility prevent you from coming to talk to us because we can figure out how to connect the dots to help you get to where you want to be.
Yeah, that's fantastic, and thank you for doing that work and helping the community.
Oh, yeah.
That I mean, I know some people at NAP even when they were unemployed took advantage of the resources that you have there. So definitely want to share those resources with the audience. Maybe they don't need them, maybe they know someone who might. So if
Yep.
you are listening and you need some help, if you've been unemployed for a while and you're struggling, definitely go check out Bryan and the folks at Goodwill.
Yeah. No,
Um,
I appreciate that. And even the people that are looking for upward mobility. If maybe you want to explore, a promotion, a higher paying job, anything like that, or just a different career field, come talk to us because we can probably make it easier for people to get to that next step.
Nice. Yeah, and it's great for us to partner at least in this way with NAP LV and with Goodwill. Um, okay, so want to start getting to some advice. So knowing what you know now, um, what advice would you give your younger self? So whether that was Bryan in college or Bryan, 5, 6 years into Goodwill, who was kind of uh, not lost, but just kind of comfortable.
Yeah, Brian in college probably needs to stop partying a little bit. No, I'm just, but no, I think that through college and through my early tenure at Goodwill, really up until 2.5, 3 years ago, I think that the same advice is applicable for both situations. And it's more about don't stop yourself from exploring things. Make sure that you are pushing the boundaries. Even where I am now, I don't want to be complacent. I don't know what my role will ever look like, if it'll change or anything like that. But I want to keep pushing that boundary to really find out what my true potential is. And I think that at the time when I was in college and when I was in my early career here at Goodwill, I thought that I was kind of reaching my potential or pushing that boundary. I was nowhere close to it. And I think that just having that growth mindset to push myself out of that comfort zone. I think if I can just maintain that, I think that that is probably the best advice that I could have provided to myself.
Yeah, I mean, just constantly like the growth mindset. It's hard to keep going, because there are going to be points in your life where you're like, I don't feel like working as hard as I've been for the last however many years,
Hmm.
right? But yeah, like that's definitely, and growing. Just so people know, growth doesn't always mean salary and titles.
Sure, sure.
Like growth can be outside work, like growing as a person, growing. Like I'm sure, like the reason why I wanted to talk about all the great things that happened to you in your life during that time,
Hmm.
because for you, growth wasn't just about Goodwill.
That's right.
Growth was about travel. It was about like exploring new experiences, getting married, like exploring that. Like you've grown so much.
Yeah, and that's the thing is I kind of dragged my feet with my engagement as well. My now wife and I were together for 7 years before I proposed to her, but everything just kind of happened all at once, like you said, and I don't think it was intentional. I don't think I planned for it to happen like that, but it felt like that was a big turning point in my life where I said, let's step out of this comfort zone, let's push it. And then all of a sudden, everything started falling into place the way that I wanted it to, and it became so much easier to go after the things that I wanted to go after and to make sure that things fell into place the way that I wanted it to, because it was just having that comfort or that ability to push out of that comfort zone to say, you know what, let's see where this goes, let's see what happens, and what's the worst that'll happen, like you said.
Yeah, it's amazing what inertia can do,
Yeah,
right? So as soon as one thing started going, it's kind of like the rest of the momentum took over the rest of your life, and you just kept going, and then your new operational mode is like continuing to push forward, as opposed to what you were doing before. It's kind of like you're comfortable, right?
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. And like you said, with growth, it doesn't always mean salary. I love my job way more than I've loved any other job I've had at Goodwill. And I've loved a lot of the jobs I've had at Goodwill. I really enjoy coming to work every day and just seeing a new program that we can help develop, or a new process that we can improve, or even just, figuring out what the problem is and how I can play a part in resolving it on a grander scale. Now, I have a lot of fun doing it, and I get a lot of passion when I'm actually doing this too.
Yeah, I can tell just the enjoyment that you get out of the things that you do. Um, okay, so one other kind of advice question: what's one book that you would say helped you the most, or you would recommend people to read?
Yeah, so I'm going to make sure I don't mess this up. I wrote it down to make sure. So this is one that there was a period of about 6 months where we were in between a chief mission services officer that we have here at Goodwill. So that's kind of my supervisor, and I acted as the interim. During that time, our CEO introduced me to The Four Disciplines of Execution by Franklin Covey, and
Mm.
ultimately it hyper focuses on what we call a wildly important goal. So it doesn't mean dismiss all the other goals, but what it means is that identify one program, let's create scorecards for it, let's make sure that we create systems of accountability, and let's report on it weekly, bi-weekly, however we need to do it, to make sure that we tackle that wholeheartedly. So I have applied that to everything that I do. I actually we went through a wildly important goal in 2024, and then we have a new one in 2025. But all of them are designed to make us more efficient, to streamline our services, to make us more effective. And it just kind of changed my way of thinking, and it helped with that growth mindset to think, don't be complacent. What can you improve? Even though I thought that we were operating at pretty maximum efficiency, recognizing one thing that we could do has saved us hundreds of thousands of dollars in our operation, which ultimately means that we can spread out our services to help more people. So it was a great book.
Yeah, I love that philosophy. It is a great book, and it's it cuts out all the noise,
Yeah.
right? Because a lot of people will say, "Oh, we should this, we should, or
Hmm.
we could," but should we? Like, if we
Right.
really want to make the biggest impact, this one program or service is outsized compared to all those other things. So why do 10 little things okay when you can do one really really impactful thing really 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 well?
Absolutely. Yeah. And it really has made us so much better. It just, even having that ability to focus, no matter what the goal is, I think just having a focus like that, it makes sure that we know exactly how to approach every day, and just kind of starting with that and then looking at the other things that we could do.
Yeah. Okay. So if people want to reach out, what's the best way, or like learn more about what you do, learn more about how they can take advantage of Goodwill? What's a good way for people to find out those things, and also and or reach out to you?
Yeah, so a couple of different ways, or a few different ways actually. visiting our website will give a lot more information than I gave. Of course, it'll give specific information about different programs that we offer. Calling one of our career centers, so they can call 702-214-2000, and it will give them a lot of different options to kind of narrow it down to what that person may be interested in. They can reach out to me. My email address is my first name, Bryan, and then my last initial F at sngoodwill.org. They can visit me on LinkedIn. There's a lot of different ways they can reach out to us, or they can just walk into one of our career centers and they don't need an appointment. We can help them kind of figure out and navigate through that.
Nice. And if you didn't get all that, we'll put it in the show notes. So don't worry about if you didn't have your pen ready. And Bryan, bold, putting your email address out there. I love it.
It's all good. That's my jam though. So I won't necessarily be able to have all the answers because sometimes I don't know everything. But if I don't know the answers, I can certainly connect people with who they need to be connected to. So I am totally cool with people emailing me all day if they want to. I'll make sure they get connected where they need to get connected.
Nice. I appreciate it. And is there any last things, anything you want the listeners to know more about you, more about Goodwill before we wrap it?
Well, I thank you so much for taking the time. I think that this has been more helpful for me than I ever would have imagined. Just even having these conversations are things that I've never really had these kind of conversations with anybody in my life before. And just recognizing the impact that a lot of different things and my upbringing and my family's history, how that's played a role in just the way that I am. But also, I do really want to make sure that we keep plugging Goodwill as much as we can because I think that it's one of those untapped resources that probably everybody can connect with in some capacity. So if you have any questions or if anybody wants to know anything more, I encourage people to keep messaging me, reach out to me so that we can figure out how we can connect and make all of our community better.
Yeah, absolutely. And we'll link the Southern Nevada Goodwill site. So if you want to email or just learn more about some of the programs, you can definitely go there. Thank you so much, Bryan, for taking the time. I know you're a busy guy, and we really appreciate you talking with us, sharing your story, learned so many amazing things and crazy things about your background. I love doing this show because, I've learned a lot about a lot of people, whether it's internment camps, folks almost not making out of the Vietnam War. There's a great amount of stories that need to be shared and need to be told. So thank you for taking the time. Really appreciate you. And that's it for this episode of AAPI Leadership Lab. Thank you, Bryan, and we'll catch you all next time.
Thank you.